are going to develop a Spring Boot application, so with REST API methods along with H2 database. So below are the steps that are involved in generating the Spring Boot application. So first thing, like, we need to generate a project by adding all the dependency details with the help of Spring Initializer. Then we need to import the downloaded the project to IDE and start coding below two classes. One is controller class and other is like DAO class. So finally we are going to validate with the help of Postman. So the first thing, we will go to Spring Initializer where we will add all the dependency details. So here this is the Spring Initializer UI screen. So the type of project that we are going to develop is Maven and the version is 2.4.4, and I have already provided the details of the project metadata. So the group name is like com.java world and the artifact name is like h2db. Okay, so below are the dependencies that I added for this project. So first thing is like Spring Web, so which we can get all the full stack web development details with the Tomcat. Okay, so and the other thing is like Spring Data JPA. So this is acting as a Java persistent API. And the next thing is like H2 database. So this is a in-memory database that is provided by Spring Boot application. And finally we have added like Lombok. So if ever required, if we want any other new dependencies, we can just click on this add dependency, we can start choosing it. For suppose if we want to use any test as like, so we can use like test containers. So whatever the dependencies or the tools, so for suppose like dev tools, if I need to add to my project, so Spring Dev Tools I can choose and add. Okay, so this is the way we can add what and all the dependencies that are required for. And here we can choose on explore. So this is like a POM file, how it is going to look for. So here the Spring Boot version we have defined as 2.4.4. so this version is internally pulled for all the child dependencies that we have defined in the file. Okay, so here we can see Spring Data JPA and Spring Starter Web and Spring Dev Tools. So H2 as an int. So this H2 database will be applied during the runtime. Okay, so that is why in the scope it has defined as a runtime. Okay, yeah, so let us download the project and we will start importing to our Eclipse IDE. So I have downloaded it and it is in zip file. So let us extract it and will import to the project. So I am moving to my Eclipse IDE. So here I have already imported the application. So this is my bare bone application. Okay, so yeah, this is the main method that is resides under H2DB application. So let us start creating some other packages which are required as part of development. So the first thing is like I'm going to create an Pojo class with the name of employee. For that I'm going to create a package. So I'm going to name it as .model package. Okay, so inside this model package I'm going to create a new class, the name of employee. I'm going to name it as employee. Okay, so for here we are going to add @entity annotation and @data. And @allogs constructor, @noargs constructor. Okay, so finally we are going to add few member variables. So public int id, public string name, public int age. So these are the three variables that are going to be involved in employee model class. So we are good with developing with employee model class. So here I am going to annotate with as @IDE. So Spring Boot is going to be automatically generate the ID. So I have defined with @ID annotation and @generated value. So with this help of these two annotations, so automatically whenever a new record is getting added inside the database, so ID will be automatically assigned with the help of by incrementing one value. Okay, so finally we are going to add a database layer. com.dao. Okay, so inside this I am going to add a new interface. So employee repository. So this will extend JPA repository. So here we need to define what is the class name. So my model name is like employee. So I'm going to select it, and here we need to give what is the data type for our primary key. So in our case, like it is an integer type. So I am defining it as an integer. Okay. So at last, like we are going to create the controller class. So this controller class is going to be inside an package, controller package. Okay, so I'm going to create a new class. Employee controller. Okay, so I'm going to annotate it with the @REST controller. So here I am pulling the repository method. So employee repository. Okay, so I'm going to annotate with auto-while. So here we are going to create some few REST methods. The first method that is going to persist an employee object inside a database. So it is going to save an employee object inside a database. Okay, so for this public so I'm going to return some string. So save employee is the method name. So I'm going to get an request body. So request body of type employee. I'm going to give a name of employee, and here we are returning some dummy string like employee created. Okay, so in order to save this employee object inside this repository, we are going to use this repository reference. Here we can see there are n number of methods that were pulled from JPA implementation. So here we are going to use the method save. So this is going to save our entity what we have passed over here. I'm going to pass employee object. Okay, so here we need to annotate it with an what kind of method it is. So it's an post method. we need to define the endpoint like save employee. Yeah, so another method is like we need to pull what and all the employees that are persisted inside the database. For that, I'm going to write a method like so list get all employees. Okay, I'm going to return directly repository dot find all. Okay, so this find all returns what and all the records that are present inside the database. So we can give control shift 2, so it will this is a shortcut like to resolve the dependencies. I'm going to import the list. Here we need to annotate with @get mapping. Okay, so I'm going to get employees. Okay, I have list of endpoints that I need to use. Okay, so I'm going to name it as like not sure what is the error. Okay, so here I need to use, it's my bad. Okay, so finally we are going to create a last method which returns a single employee object details. Okay, so get employee by ID. Okay, so for this we need to use @path variable. So here we are getting the ID of the employee, so we need to pull from repository dot find by ID, and we need to just pass the ID what we are going to use. Yeah, here we need to return it. Okay, so here we are getting an cannot convert from optional to employee. Yeah. So optional whenever we are wrapping with an optional class, so this will ensure to avoid null pointer exception for in case like the employee ID what we have passed over here, if with that ID if there is no record identified, so then it is going to return a null pointer exception. So to avoid such cases, so we are using optional wrapper class. Okay, so we need to use @get mapping, and we need to define @employee, and here we are going to use the ID. Okay, so with these things we have completed our controller class, and finally we need to start validating it. For this thing we will first run the application and we will verify by using Postman. Okay, so application is going to be launched. Here the server is running on the port 8080, so which is an default port. And other thing what we can observe over here is like we are using of dialect of org.hibernate.dialect.h2dialect. So this dialect specifies what kind of database that we are going to interact with. Here we are going to interact with the h2 database, so which is an in-memory database. Okay, so application is started in port 8080. So we'll go to Postman. Okay. Yeah, so once we are inside this Postman, so we need to first insert some of the records. So we are going to choose post method. Okay. Here we need to use HTTP localhost 8080 slash, and what is the endpoint? So save employee. So save employee headers part. So we are going to define like a content type. So content type. So we are going to define application or JSON. So just go to the body section and select raw, and here we will pass this employee details. Okay, I already have the body. Okay, so let us click on send button. Okay, so we should not use HTTPS. That is the reason that we are going to get this error, and let us try one more time. Yes, so here we can see a successful response, employee created. Okay, so we can create some other employee details. We can add, so I have added another person with Priya of age of 27. So here we can notice like we are not passing the ID, so ID is going to be created automatically with an incremented value. So send employee created, and I'm going to add one more employee name. So, and his age is going to be 19. Okay, so I have successfully created 3 employees. So let us start fetching whether we can retrieve all the employee details or not. For this thing we need to use HTTP localhost 8080 slash, so get all employees my endpoint. this end. Yeah, so here we can see we from the database we have pulled 3 employee IDs. So 1, 2, 3, and 3 employee names we can see: Sai, Prashant, Priya, and Sumant. So successfully we have retrieved the data from the database. So let us test the final method by for a specific employee details. Okay, so here we are using like employee, get employee is the endpoint. Okay, so then after we need to give which employee details we need to fetch it. Okay, so the third employee details has successfully pulled it. So this is how in-memory H2 database is going to work. And the important point that we need to notice is like, so till now whatever the operations that we have performed from Postman, so it was successful because the application is successfully running up and running. So once we stop this application and if we rerun it again, so we have stopped the application and we have ran it again. So let us verify whether this data has been present inside this database or not. Okay, so the application has been started. So let us try to pull a single employee detail. Okay, so we'll try to fetch the employee 3. Okay, click on send. So here we can see a null value is returned for. So that means like the lifetime of the data will be within the application runtime. So once we stop the application, if we start it again, so that data will be lost. So this is the brief description of in-memory database, so H2 database. So this database will be embedded within the SpringBoot application. Okay, so thanks for watching. Please do subscribe for upcoming technical videos. Thank you so much. Bye bye.